back to CPS Live, and I am here with my guest, Juana T. Children.
Thank you, Buzz, for having me on the show. Taking children from families is my favorite subject.
I believe that. There are 500,000 children in foster care at any given time, correct?
Oh yes. We have a thriving business nationwide, and it is getting bigger every day. You might say it is the state's stimulus package. Great investment. For every dollar the state spends, we give them two. Kind of a reward for following United Nations agenda.
But the children are in danger, aren't they? I believe you call in imminent danger.
Not necessarily. First, we find a defect in the family and we blow it out of proportion and the judge signs off on it. Then we interrogate the children to find out more family errors and defects so that we can substantiate the removal. If we can't find evidence, then we call in a psychologist who will give a diagnosis in the state's favor.
Is all this legal? It sure doesn't sound like it.
The most important thing is that everyone is on the same page. We have accomplished that. The legislators create vague laws that allow the courts to make any decision they want. The judges in turn make sure they have little to no accountability. The system has given everyone immunity, so that any damage to the community goes unpunished. In other words, if a law gets passed regardless of its merit, it is still the law, and that makes what we do legal.
What about the children? Aren't they damaged by this?
Well, sure, they get damaged, but we just drug them till they drool to keep them quiet. Once they age out of the system, they will have babies they can't take care of, and we remove them too. One might say it is job security and an excellent way to fund state overspending.
This smacks of immorality. Don't you feel guilty about taking children who shouldn't be taken from families?
Buzz, you are sounding like a terrorist. I'm going to call Homeland Security. Do you have grandchildren? I think I will find out, and make sure you never see them again for resisting our ideas.
Are you threatening me?
Yes, I'm threatening you. I can do whatever I want to, and there is nothing you can do about it. I have support all the way up to the UN to take your grandchildren, other members of your family's children, and get them all removed, just because I say so. I suggest you sound a little more supportive of child protection. We are the future.
I think you underestimate the American people.
Oh, I don't think so. If the American people were going to stop us, they would have already done so. We are confident that our agenda will be fulfilled. There may be a few objections, but they always end up compliant. You see, you have no choice. You will support us or lose you, family.
A word to the audience. You have heard it here. You know it's the truth. Now what are you going to do about it? There are thousands of Juana T. Childrens out there removing children from homes that don't need to be removed. You must make a stand or lose it all.
Now it is my turn. We are tired of you and your problems. You are like little children who need guidance. Therefore we are going to control you, your children, what you teach them, how you raise them, and all aspects of your life is our decision, not yours. We will control your finances, and spend taxes however we want to without your permission. We will violate your privacy any way we see fit. You might as well surrender, we have the power.
Do you really think that you can continue to operate this way without a revolution?
I think if the American people rise up, we will crush them like a bug. They know this, and it is why we can take their children, and they do nothing. We will take them, and take them, and take them, and they will do nothing. Threats will only get them behind bars. They have lost their freedom. Now they just need to let it sink in and comply.
I think you are just straight up evil. And dangerous.
We are going to create a new world. In this world there will be peace and harmony, because anything that does not look peaceful will result in government violence against them.
How can you promote peace if you are violent?
Are you being unsupportive again? Dante, you know that will result in horrible consequences against you and your family. I thought you would have gotten my point by now. I have the power. You will do what I want sooner or later. You may fight for a while, but you will lay down and take it. They always do.
Final words. Have things gone too far? Do they have all the control, or do they just want us to think they do? Can't we stop their terrorist actions against the American people? If we don't fight for something, we will fall for anything. It is time to make a stand collectively. The time is today. Buzz Bangren, over and out.
Good evening, and welcome to Baby Stealer Training. I'm your instructor, Zippy the Hippie. Tonight we're going to discuss making money from Child Protective Services. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act provides federal funding to states in support of prevention, assessment, investigation, prosecution, and treatment of child abuse. It also provides grants to public agencies and nonprofit organizations for various programs and projects. This law provided the funds for the child protective system that we have today. The federal government spends approximately $33 billion a year, supposedly keeping children safe from abuse and neglect, not to mention the amounts paid by the various states and counties throughout the country. Although well-meaning when enacted, as nobody could righteously deny the need to protect children from abuse or neglect, this law has been abused by those looking for a profit. Even today, innocent families are being destroyed at the hands of these sadistic profiteers who stand to gain from keeping kids in the system. These people, we will refer to as system sucks. A system suck is a person who makes money off of foster children or children associated with child protective services. Oftentimes, they sign contracts that last for years, and with lots of money involved. Far too common, for example, are cases in which a family's poverty is confused with child neglect. Several studies have found, for example, that 1/3 of foster children could be back home right now if their parents simply had adequate housing. However, because they get so much money to care for these children, instead of helping the poor to find adequate housing, the poor have become easy targets due to their inability to fight child protective services, by providing themselves with the best lawyers against a system with so much power and influence that they can simply snatch a child from a home at any time and for any reason, based on the monetary value of the child versus the parent's ability to fight. The system sucks are in turn fluffing the numbers in an effort to grow their businesses, by simply making the problem of child abuse and neglect appear worse than it actually is. So they publish a few studies that support their cause, spread around the anti-child abuse propaganda to manufacture support from the taxpayer, and convince the public that the money is needed and used to protect children from abuse and neglect, while at the same time forcing the parents to pay for services, or lose their children. Parents who can afford it, spend thousands on lawyers to help with the court process, as Child Protective Services creates a whole slew of legal problems. These lawyers, who prey off a parent's desperation, are often able to drag these kinds of cases out for years. This increases the hourly income that they get from the parents, practically sucking them dry financially for as long as it takes. Those who can't afford a good lawyer are given a public pretender, which is typically a lawyer who is paid by and friendly to the state. Public pretenders who are not friendly to the state don't get contracts to fight for the parents. Parents who can afford it are also required to go to shrinks for psychological assessments and therapy for both the children and the parents. Those who can't afford it are given other CPS cronies to provide these services, and these system sucks are paid by the state. There are also many other service providers such as drug treatment facilities and parenting education providers that contract with CPS to supposedly help the family in their fights to get their children back. Those who cannot afford the services lose their kids forever, either to foster care, where foster parents and various other system sucks receive ongoing payments from the states to provide homes and services to care for the child, or adoption, in which case the system sucks get nice little bonuses from the feds. Many foster children have suffered heart-wrenchingly difficult lives, while caught up in the system that wants to keep them safe from good and loving, but poor parents based on the money that those who then control the child's life get from the government. For example, lawyers who are appointed to look after a child's best interest as guardian ad litem are given lengthy contracts by the states and paid to look out for the kid's best interest. The longer that kid is caught up in the system, the longer their contract lasts and the longer they have a steady income. It's as simple as that. If they can get the kid adopted, they get a nice little lump sum bonus. Then we have psychiatrists and private therapists that are able to get Medicaid payments in order to provide ongoing services for these kids. The more difficult the child, the more money they get. Therefore, foster children are much more likely to be found to have special needs and be medicated with psych meds than are non-foster children. That way the shrinks can drum up some really nice business with guaranteed money from the states to care for foster children, as well as receiving kickbacks from the drug companies for pushing their psych meds onto foster children, and the shrinks in turn hand over their records to the drug manufacturers for research purposes, and get a few kickbacks from that. Although it would be much cheaper to help a family and keep the child in the home, it is much more profitable for those who are against the parents to get and keep them in foster care. The estimated average cost of providing preventive services is $8,000 a year per family. The average cost of keeping a child in foster care, $40,000 a year. Foster parents are paid monthly payments to keep these children in their homes. Although many have complained that it's not enough, the fact is that some foster parents are paid quite well. Many fosters take in several children at a time. And let's not forget, a foster parent can earn even more if the child has special needs. Eligible therapeutic foster parents can earn $20,000 a year plus medical benefits for caring for a developmentally disabled child brought through the program. Let's also not forget the group homes and treatment facilities which deal with children with special needs. In a residential child caring institution, foster care payments range from $80 to $250 per day. These, and many other financial incentives have caused children to be stuck in foster care, including the kids who otherwise could have gone home, if the families had simply been provided the services that they needed, and at a lower cost, so that they could be better able to care for their children. Thank you, and have a good night.
Hello, I'm a child protective worker. I work for the product acquisition team of the child protective industry. We got a report from an anonymous caller saying that you abused or neglected your child. I have been sent here to investigate. You have the right to cooperate. Resistance is futile. You have no other choice but to let me do my job. You must answer all of my questions and tell me everything I want to hear. If you refuse, I'll go right down to the courthouse and have the judge sign a removal order, which I'll probably do anyway. It's better to be safe than sorry, you know. You will be required to sign forms giving me permission to conduct my investigation, including talking to your doctors, your kids' teachers and daycare providers, or anyone else who has any information about you or your family. You will also sign a form giving me permission to go to your kids' school and talk to them without any parental interference. I can show up at any time without any prior notice, and I can take your kid away from you without a shred of evidence of any parental wrongdoing. You are completely at my mercy, and I already don't like you. I can take your children away and make it so you can never see them again. What do you think about that? I will not be held accountable for any wrongdoing, no matter how bad I screw up, because I am immune from prosecution, and the judge will simply rubber stamp his signature on any piece of paper I put in front of him, so you really don't stand much of a chance. So where should we begin? Why don't you tell me everything that I want to hear while I go looking around your house for any safety issues that I can think of? I think you're a terrible parent. You beat your kid, don't you? No, you say? Well, I don't believe you. I'm going to take your kid away and throw them into a foster home. Then I'm going to require you to undertake a series of tasks, including drug screenings, psychological evaluations, and parenting classes. These service providers will all help me to build my case against you, and no matter how hard you try, it will never be enough. I'll just simply find something else to use against you, and keep adding it on. Well, I guess that's enough for today. See you soon.
Good morning. I'm the trial judge in your child abuse case. You are going to waive the reading of the allegations against you. Your children are in foster care placement because the attorney for the children said that they are very afraid of you. I have worked with the attorney for the child for years, and I believe everything she says. I understand you did not get served with the summons to this case. That doesn't matter. You're here anyway. If you need counsel, we have a free attorney available for you who is certified by the court. If you hire private counsel, he better behave in this court. I will not hesitate to sanction and fine him. I'll write reports to his disciplinary committee for the slightest infraction. Your motion for immediate return of your children is denied. I find there is imminent risk of harm to life or limb for all of your children. You have leave to refile the motion for immediate return of the child, but that hearing will take place over the next 4 months because my calendar is busy. I will deny your motions for privately retained psychologists to testify because of the risk of trauma to the child because of repeated psychological evaluations. So you'll have to go with what the court psychologist says. I will qualify that psychologist in the area of psychology and allow him to offer an opinion on any area he wishes to discuss. I will find his testimony credible and his report helpful to the court. I will sustain all objections as to the psychologist's qualifications, his disciplinary history, his methodology, and his reliability. That's all irrelevant to this case. I will cut short cross-examination of the court's professionals to save time. I will cut short opposition to motions filed by the Child Protective Services. I used to work for Child Protective Services, and I know they are never wrong. I will deny motions to get records, reports, and other evidence. I will not allow subpoenas of either the foster care agency or the Child Protective Services. That's not important. This case is about how you abused your children. I will conduct a fact-finding hearing which I will decide based upon the preponderance of the evidence that you abused or neglected your children, and then I will dispose of this matter based upon clear and convincing evidence that you abused this child. I will conduct permanency hearings once every 6 months. You may or may not get a report from Child Protective Services in advance of that permanency hearing. If you don't file an appeal, the appellate court will show you and your attorney the seriousness of hurting a child. I will entertain motions, and I will issue orders without notice to you. Right now you have an order of protection against you. There is no contact with your child until further order of the court. If you violate this order, I will hold you in contempt here, and I will report you to the district attorney's office to commence criminal prosecution against you as well. This does not violate the prohibition against double jeopardy. If any of your privately retained professionals commit misconduct, I will file complaints with their licensing committees. I see that you have an order of child support for the child. You will continue to pay child support. You do not have to see the child to pay support. I will incarcerate you if you do not pay support. Throughout this case, I will be on the bench whenever I feel like it. If I am not here, you will have to wait until my court staff tells you that the case is adjourned, and you will return months later. All motions will be continued to that date, and I will not have another judge preside in my absence. This case is too important for that. Any attorney who fails to appear before me will get an order to show cause for contempt unless they work for the government. Your failure to appear before me will result in default, and I will dispose of the case forthwith. Do you have any questions? How do you plead? This case will now be continued for the next 6 months. Have a good day.
Back to CPS Live, and I am here with my guest, Juana Teak Children.
Thank you, Buzz, for having me on the show. Taking children from families is my favorite subject.
I believe that. There are 500,000 children in foster care at any given time.
The system has given everyone immunity, so that any damage to the community goes unpunished. In other words, if a law gets passed regardless of its merit, it is still the law, and that makes what we do legal.
What about the children? Aren't they damaged by this?
Well, sure, they get damaged, but we just drug them till they drool to keep them quiet. Once they age out of the system, they call in a psychologist who will give a diagnosis in the state's favor.
Is all this legal? It sure doesn't sound like it.
The most important thing is that everyone is on the same page. We have accomplished that. The legislators create vague laws that allow the courts to make any decision they want. The judges in turn make sure they have little to no accountability.
All in imminent danger.
Not necessarily. First, we find a defect in the family and blow it out of proportion, and the judge signs off on it. Then we interrogate the children to find out more family errors and effects so that we can substantiate the removal. If we can't find evidence, then we...
Correct?
Oh yes. We have a thriving business nationwide, and it is getting bigger every day. You might say it is the state's stimulus package. Great investment. For every dollar the state spends, we give them $2. Kind of a reward for following United Nations agenda.
But the children are in danger, aren't they? I believe you call